Let's give a brief basic usage overview of BetterAuth. So here they're going to use GitHub as an example, but remember that we added both GitHub and Google. So when we conduct a sign-in here, we're going to be using our Auth client that we created in /lib auth client. The way that we can get it follows this particular schema here. So the ID of the provider, it's a plain text string that you provide. So we're going to be using GitHub and Google. So we're going to provide GitHub and Google for the appropriate sign-in function call. Then we're going to need a URL to redirect after the user authenticates with the provider. So we're going to go over to home afterwards. So by default, it goes to / but remember for us in our landing page, it's going to be the public side. So we're going to be going to /home. Here they do /dashboard. A URL to redirect if an error occurs during the sign-in process. So if you'd like to create an error state and put it under your own route, you're welcome to do so. A URL to redirect if the user is newly registered. This can take you over to a onboarding page. So that's really useful there. And then we can also disable the automatic redirect to the provider. So that's by default false, but if you need to set up an automatic redirect, then you can leave that to true. In this tutorial, we're not going to touch this one. We're mostly going to be concerned with these two, the provider and then the callback function. We're not going to provide an error state because it does have one by default, but if you wanted to provide a custom one, you're certainly welcome to do so. Then on the sign out side here, we also have another asynchronous function here, awaiting a sign out. We have our fetch options. On success, when we sign out, we need to go somewhere. We can either redirect to the login page, which in my personal opinion, it's kind of weird because if someone just signed out, would they want to sign in again? Potentially, maybe to a different account. For me personally, I push people to the landing page to just demonstrate to them that they're fully logged out. But I also think that in some cases, pushing someone to the login, also totally valid. Now, you'll see here, right, that we're using router here. And in this one, it's already a part of the function to redirect. But in both of these cases, invoking this function, you're generally going to do that on the click of a button. And so on clicks in React generally are done in client components. So we're going to need to separate out a bit of our code into client components when it comes to signing in and signing out. So we'll do that in a little bit. But yep, once we do that, we're going to need to separate these out into client components. On the pages themselves, we are going to be grabbing the session data. Now we can do it on the client side, but we're going to need to do some server side things on our pages. So we're going to be worrying about using get session here. So you can see here that they're creating a way to get your sessions awaiting the get sessions function invocation, passing in the headers. We can create a little wrapper around this to have a common function so we don't have to write this in every single one of our files. So let's jump into the code and do that real quick. All right, so for our demo, let's go back and take a look at the specific pages here. And something that we're going to need to add is a way to actually get to our login page from our landing page, and then maybe a button for us to sign out of. So, and also hook up authorization as well. Okay, so here in the landing page, we're going to need to provide a link from next/link here. Provide an href, which will be going over to login. And then inside of here, we'll just add in a button from shadcn components and put inside of our button log in. So let's just take a look at that real quick. Okay, we have a login button, but let's make this look a little bit better. Flex items, center, min, height, screen. Let's just check on the login. Anything else that we need? Justify center with the full. Okay, I'll just copy that. so that we have a full screen here. And let's just save that. Make sure, okay, everything is there. We just need to do flex column so that things are right on top of each other. That looks great. Let's make sure that we can hit the login button here. Okay, great. That takes us over to our login screen. And then obviously when we log in, we'll be taken to home. And then I will actually copy paste this bit. Well, this bit here first into our home, just for, again, this is for demo purposes. So we're going to need to create a specific component. And so in our components here, we're going to create a new folder here for Auth to create a sign out button. Sign out button.tsx. The reason that we need to create a separate one is that it's going to be a client component. Okay, so back into our code here, we're going to go to library, we're going to go to our auth.ts file here. We're going to need to add in a couple of things. From the documentation inside of the drizzle information, we're going to need to provide our database. So we're just going to copy this bit here, go into our better auth instance here, paste it in there. We need to provide both of these. We can just copy the imports from here. So this one's correct, but the DB is from a different location. Let's import. For some reason, it's not auto importing DB from @/DB. There we go. We are not using SQLite. We're using Postgres. So make sure that you make that change. Then we're going to need to provide a page to let BetterAuth know where our login is going to be. So it's going to be on the login route. So make sure that you write it correctly. Login here. And then lastly, we're going to do export const get session. So we're going to create a helpful wrapper function, async auth API get session headers await headers. We're going to grab that from next/headers, bring that up here, and that is a function. Cool. So now inside of our pages, we can do get sessions and determine whether or not the user is authorized or not. Okay, now let's update the UI so that we can incorporate some of the authorization specific code so that we can perform the demo. After we finished creating our schema, we can then add it in to the drizzle instance that we've created inside of index.ts. So we're going to just provide import star as schema from @/db/ or actually we can just do ./schema since we're not going to be moving these away from each other. So now we can just provide in schema to here. And we need to wrap schema within an object. Once we save that, we should be all set. Let's add in export const sign out button here. Then upon a successful sign out, we're going to need to navigate the user. And in our case, we're going to navigate them to the login screen. So we're going to do const router is equal to use router. So we're going to call the use router hook. This first one, next/router, is for page routers. We're using app router, so we're not going to use this one. We're going to use the one from next/navigation. You can see here, this one's for app router. And for this specific example, to use inside of a client component, we've used the use client directive here to declare that sign out button is a client component. So we need to use the second one. Make sure you don't make that mistake. So there, we've called the hook there to get our router instance. Then next, we need to get a neat sign out method, which will be an asynchronous arrow function here, awaiting the result of auth client. grab that from /lib auth client. Let's just move these into ABC order. Dot sign out there. Sign out takes in an object with our fetch options, which also is another object here on success. So when we're successful in our sign out, we're going to do router.push over to login. Great. Whoops. Okay, comma, semicolon. And then I'm going to provide the rest of the contents of our sign out button here. Make sure that you're grabbing it from @components UI button. Great. And then for our on click here, we're going to have sign out. And then variant, just to make it look different than the earlier login button, we're going to use variant of outline. Great. And provide sign out. Great. So make sure that we have everything in here that we need for a sign out button. Then in our home page, we're adding a sign out button. Okay, great. Next, we're going to implement some authorization to our pages here. So starting with the landing page, let me just reorder this. This is going to be a public page. And so if the user is logged in already, then they're going to be kicked over to the home page. If they're unauthorized, then they can just stay on the landing page. For the login page, it's a public page, obviously, for login. But if you're already logged in, then it's going to kick you to home. And then home is going to be the private page. If you navigate to home and you're not authorized, it's going to kick you over to login. And obviously, if you are authorized, it should display all this information, allow for you to sign out, which will ultimately kick you to the login page. So let's implement that. Okay, starting with the landing page here. So what we're going to do is first make this asynchronous. If you remember, our getSession function was asynchronous. So we need to grab the promise from it and evaluate it so we can get a valid sessions object. Look if here, if you did not do await, you'd be getting a promise, which you can't use. So here, by evaluating it, we can do the same check as was described in the documentation. If session does exist, we're going to call the redirect function here, grab it from /navigation. I don't know what this one is. Use this one. This one's the navigation one. It can be used in server components, which this one is, so that we can make this one asynchronous. Cool. So we're going to redirect and go over to home. So if the user is authorized, then there will be a session instance. And in this session instance, if it exists, then we're going to redirect to home. Otherwise, we're just going to flow through to the landing page. Great. On the login, well, we've used the use client directive here. And so we're going to need to extract some of these pieces out of here, as well as implementing sign-in. So let me skip that for now. Let's go over to home. So home is going to be the opposite of what we did on the landing page. So we're going to grab session here, get, await, get session. We have an error because I did not make this asynchronous. Let's order this in ABC order. And then if not session, so if a session does not exist for the user, we're going to redirect them to the login screen. Let's bring that to the top just to get everything in ABC order. Great. Okay, now on to the login. We're going to have to modify our landing page here to be a server component. And so we're going to have to do a little bit of refactoring to change this from a client component. So the first thing that we can do is get rid of this use client declaration there. We're going to have to move this portion into its own component. So we're going to go into auth here, and we're going to create a new file, login buttons.tsx. This is going to be a client component. Use client at the top. Export const login buttons. and we're going to return this bit here. Let's make this look better. Great. And we're going to need some imports. So let me go back here, retrieve these imports from the login page. So I'm just cutting and pasting these in here, and I cut in the wrong place. There we go. Great. So everything looks right. And so now we can just call login buttons. There we go. Was waiting for that tab option. Cool. So there we go. If we go over to the code, we refresh. Yep, everything looks the same on the login. Wonderful. So let's add in the same thing that we had within our landing page. So this is a public page, but if the user is already logged in, then we'd redirect them to home. They don't need to do the login again. If they wanted to log in with a different account, for example, then they'd have to sign out, get back to the login, and then log in with a different account. Great. So now going back over to the login page, we need to create two sign-ins. So sign in with GitHub and a const sign in with Google. We're going to start back up with GitHub here, and we're going to do async arrow function await auth client. So import that from /lib auth client dot sign in, and we're using social sign in here. And we're going to provide a callback URL, which will be home, and a provider, which will be GitHub, all lowercase. Great. And we're going to do basically a similar thing for Google. Let me just copy that, paste it over for Google, but instead of GitHub here, I'm going to use Google instead. Then let me just make this a little bit neater. And just do click, provide sign in with GitHub here. And then we can just copy this here, put this here, and instead of sign in with GitHub, we're using sign in with Google instead. Did I misspell something? Oh, uppercase I. There. Let's look through and make sure that everything is in there. Make sure that you're grabbing auth client from /lib auth client, the shadcn button, sign in with GitHub. We are providing a callback URL on a successful GitHub login. We're going to home and using the provider GitHub there, callback URL home, provider is Google for Google. In the GitHub button, we're signing in with GitHub, and with the Google button, we're signing in with Google. Great. Everything looks in order. We have our login button inside of the login page. All right. Let's navigate over to our thing here. Okay, so let's try out using GitHub first. So it'll take us to this GitHub login screen. So I'm going to log in real quick. Okay, and once we hit authorized after we logged in here, we're going to be redirected to our home page here. When we hit sign out, we get back over to the login. So now let's try Google. Okay, and when I click on Google here, I'll be prompted to sign in. So I'm going to sign in with my test account here. And once I sign in, we're going to be taken to the home screen again. Wonderful. So we can sign out, we can try it all again, GitHub, successful login, sign out, Google, successful login. Wonderful. So obviously, if we try to go to the landing page here, we're going to be redirected back to home. If we sign out, we'll go back to login. If I try to go to home, I'm going to be sent back to login. So I don't know if you saw that on the top. We can try it again, just so you can see, pay attention. See, when I hit home here, I hit enter, redirects me back over to login. If I log in real quick, I'm taken to home. If I try to go to localhost 3000 just at the base level here. I hit enter. I get sent over to home. Wonderful. So we're verified that our authentication works. One thing that we can also look at is how it looks like underneath the hood. So let's take a look here. Let me just refresh the database here. Make sure that we have everything. We have the 2 Google and GitHub accounts here. And you might notice something here. We only have 1 user. So because we said that the email is unique, even though this person has used 2 different accounts, this person being me, they have the same email. So thus only 1 user is created. But we've basically linked this 1 user to 2 separate accounts, one using GitHub and one using Google. So great. Hopefully you've been able to understand how authorization works. Now we're going to continue working with our database here. How can we get some more data stored onto a server and be able to retrieve it? It's the main basis for any application. So let's dig deeper into some services that are going to help us, namely TRPC and TANStack query.